I'm intrigued by your topic today, right? The narcissistic family rules. Why is it important? First of all, I guess, what are those and why is it important that we learn about them?
I have just recently, and I've been recently been working on a video to talk about like 16 narcissistic family rules. Also, Julie Hall in her book, The Narcissists You Know, or The Narcissists in Your Life, there's another book close to that title, The Narcissists in Your Life, Julie Hall, she has a great book. She talks about narcissistic family rules too, and I've added some to that. I'm not going to go through all of them today, but I wanted to go through 2 or 3 or something like that so that you could see how someone who's in recovery or been struggling with narcissistic abuse from family and gaslighting from family can use those as pointers to healing and recovery. Mm-hmm. That's why we want to go over them. There are many people also don't realize, and in fact, I was wanting to do this video so they'd look at their family rules. In fact, I did do a video, now that I think of it. I did do a family video on those 16 rules and got good feedback from that. Now I want to do a video on overcoming and healing from those family rules. So I'm going to do a video on all those to talk about those 16. Great. And this is a little preview of that I'll be sharing today. Great. Because they're so important, because problems or issues that we have are the roadmap to our healing. Whatever problems we experience, those are the way out as well. They are the problems, but they're also the way out and the way to healing and recovery. Gotcha. So that's why I talked about keys to overcoming narcissistic family rules.
Great. Well, let's, and I love the shout out to Julie because we love Julie also. She's also an AVAIYA teacher and does great work. And so let's talk about a few of them. Why don't you outline a few of these narcissistic family rules, and then we can talk about how knowing about them is important for recovery.
Well, and just to say a few of them, like the first one is the narcissist is always right. And that's one of the rules in a narcissistic family. The narcissist must always be right. Second of all, another rule, and without going through all of them, but a second one might be, there must be someone to blame. There always must be somebody to blame. And that's a rule that's also a part of a narcissistic family. Thirdly, vulnerability is dangerous. That's another rule. And another rule might be let's say a 4, feelings are always wrong. And those are just 4 of the rules. And I'm going to be talking about all 16 in my upcoming videos. And it is so important because these are gateways and a roadmap into understanding recovery and healing. Because if you know those rules, you can then begin to recover and heal knowing those rules. And I was going to share with you today how to do that.
Let's do it.
I also believe you're in the title of the conference, it talks about overcoming gaslighting too. Well, unhealthy narcissistic family rules are a form of programmed gaslighting. Because everything I've just mentioned is a part of a gaslighting. The narcissist is always right. Is that truth or is that a gaslight? Feelings are dangerous. Is that truth or is that gaslighting? Well, it's a gaslighting. And that these rules are a part of our internal trance. We have that trance that we have that carries on into adulthood, and we operate out of that trance. And by undoing or overcoming these rules, we can begin to break that trance or hypnotic state that we have with narcissistic abuse, narcissistic families, narcissistic relationships, because we often are operating in those in a type of a trance, our codependent trance, if I can use it that way. And codependents are under that trance too. And whether there's narcissism or not, codependency is a trance. It infects everything and how you feel, how you think, how you act. And we do that with that trance experience. If the first one, for example, the narcissist is always right, then what we want to do to recover is to learn how that is wrong, that it is a myth. So we want to learn about the narcissist, learn about narcissistic symptoms, learn about traits of the narcissist and narcissism, so we can begin to undermine that the narcissist is always right, should be right, has to be right. No, that's wrong. They are not right. We want to also, using Julie's book, you can kind of take a look at how you learn how the narcissist feels and why being right is so important. And I think that's a part of the process that goes on in a narcissistic family. The rightness is what the narcissists use to regulate their emotional life. And I think that's very important. It is that rightness is how they need to be okay. Because if they're not right, they're not okay. Mm-hmm. And that can begin to help us detach from the narcissist. And we want to begin to detach from that relationship emotionally, if not physically and mentally and every other way. But that rightness is to regulate their emotional life. And that's what, if you look back at families that are narcissistic or have a narcissistic parent or narcissistic siblings, you'll see how important that is. And also you'll see why that functions that way. And that allows us to be more of an observer, as Ross Rosenberg says, rather than an absorber of that rightness. I want to observe the need for that rightness. I don't want to just absorb it and then act into it.
Right.
Another thing we might see, if rightness is always correct, then I want to begin to work on my otherness awareness. They are other, I am me. They can think that way, wrong as it is, or if it sometimes is right, could be right, but that's them and I'm me. And so we begin to work on a more self-differentiated recovery from narcissistic families. We are us and they are them, and we're not the same. And also working on, is it okay to not be the same? Is it okay to not be the same as your family? Is it okay to not believe what your family believes? Is it okay to not partake of that narcissistic super self that's a part of the family that I just came out of and that's I'm still have an umbilical cord to? Mm-hmm. And I want to work at cutting that emotional umbilical cord by me being them, me being me, and them being them. And then if anybody wants any references to the books on self-differentiation, because I encourage that for my narcissistic abuse victims and those who suffer through gaslighting and all of that with narcissism, that they begin to work on their own self-differentiation. You can also request that by contacting me. Let's talk about another rule.
Yeah.
There must be someone to blame. That there always must be someone to blame. That's one of the rules in a narcissistic relationship or a narcissistic family. Many times we have been traumatized, but also hypnotized in that trance. There always must be someone to blame. And many times when we're an unrecovered adult child of a narcissist, what do? We're spending a lot of time blaming people. We can spend a lot of time blaming them, blaming our parents, blaming everybody in the world. And we think, well, that's the way you should do it. That's how you are an adult. No. Blame, again, is the way a narcissistic family regulates itself. That's a part of the process of regulating themselves through blame. And the narcissist will blame to regulate their own inner anxiety and emotional life. Blame must occur. So we want to be real careful about blaming. Now, I do want to say, of course, we have to take responsibility. People need to take responsibility for their actions. They need to take responsibility for themselves. I understand that. But making someone accountable or responsible is not just the emotional dynamic of blame. That's a whole different dynamic emotionally. Blaming creates insecurity, shame, guilt, false responsibility, and over and under functioning. That's what blame does. Blame is immature. Holding someone accountable is not. Blame is emotional and mental manipulation. Blame also needs a target. Well, if we're operating in a mature way, why do we need a target? And blame is a part of the enmeshment process in an unrecovered life. And so we can sort through responsibility. You know, there is responsibility. There's real harm that has taken place, or real abuse, or real gaslighting. I understand that. But that's, again, I try to help people move away from the blaming part, because that's going to keep them immature. And we want to refuse to absorb blame and refuse to accept blame or be manipulated by the blame. Families need to blame to avoid blame. That's why we do it. And the narcissist is the same. The narcissist needs to blame to avoid blame. And so whenever we're blaming, we need to take a look at, how am I not looking at me right now? I'm only looking at them. And so I think it's important that we use that as a recovery tool regarding blame. When we know it has happened, and that's been the normal part of our family life, and then it's a part of our trance and what we see every day. And I see people every day who are in, whether alcoholic, addict, adult children of narcissists, ACOAs, whatever, they will find themselves trapped in a blaming cycle. And that hinders their recovery rather than helps them with their recovery when we do that blaming. And then you say, oh, well, then you're letting everybody off scot-free? There is no justice? Well, first of all, if you think living in this life is about justice, maybe you need to rethink that a little bit. I don't know that it's fair. I don't know that it's about justice. Bad things happen to good people. Good things happen to bad people. I'm sorry, that's just the universe we live in. I wish it wasn't that way, but that's what I found to be true. It's not fair. And so I don't want to get caught up in that dynamic that will only take me downward. Mm-hmm. Anything you want to ask me at this point? I've been preaching here for a while.
I love it. Yeah, I'm so glad you went into blame, because absolutely it can be so, especially if we've had something happen to us that obviously is wrong, and maybe abusive and all of that. Obviously we're going to go into, that's a very natural thing to go into it. But how long are we there, right? How long are we in it? How many years of our life or months of our life are we spending in that kind of negative energy, as opposed to, turning around and looking at ourselves? What can we do to love ourselves? What can we do to, cultivate healthy relationships and get out of that kind of blame? Because I definitely know for myself, if I'm overly in that state of blame with anybody in life, it's very toxic to our bodies. It's not good.
And you made a great point. And I use the kind of notion that identifying responsibility is not equivalent to blaming.